Life is full of fleeting moments. Life teaches us to enjoy youth and to let our feelings in our hearts fly free. Even in the face of adversity, we must overcome these difficulties in order to accomplish our goals, to move with confidence and dedication to reach what we admire and long for. Welcome to the August Hail, and today we're going to be taking a look at the visual novel, If My Heart Had Wings. If My Heart Had Wings introduces our main character, Aoi, where after getting a knee injury, Aoi has forced himself to retire from cycling. Aoi retreats to his old hometown, where upon arrival, he meets a lonely girl in a wheelchair, outlooking the hillside, where the two of them see a beautiful glider soaring in the sky. Together, along with his childhood friend Ageha and the genius student Amane, the four work together to resurrect the Soaring Club to once again fly among those blue skies. Now I'm going to address the biggest problem with this visual novel, the actual localization. Now I got If My Heart Had Wings by MoeNovel on Steam. And while I am by no means an expert in translation and localization, especially since I don't know have the Japanese version, what I can tell you is that the official translation is bad. Segments are incomprehensible, awkward, and have terrible English phrasing. I've listed a couple of examples, and there are two main offenders. One, the official translation doesn't read like native-speaking English, and two, the meanings expressed can be vastly different at times. And this isn't singular instances either. This is practically every other line. The examples that I've listed are back-to-back scenes and dialogue. It's bad enough to the point where if you Google If My Heart Had Wings translation, you will get tons of pages of people criticizing MoeNovel for its localization, translation-wise. Now, rumor has it, and don't tell anyone I told you about this, but if you Google around, you can find a fan translation that fixes the original translation so that it's more tolerable and actually readable, which is pretty much essential to a visual novel. One of the nice things about this visual novel is that there are 3D animated scenes involving the glider flying. These scenes are strategically placed during the visual novel's high points. While not the most crisp and clean 3D animation, and by no means is it terrible CG, it's a nice touch that's unique to this visual novel. Another thing that's unique about this visual novel is that there's substantial explanations about flying and piloting. These scenes are nicely appreciated, considering the fact that I don't know anything about airplanes. These scenes are present for a short time and doesn't stay too long to be overly boring, but remain simple and relevant enough to understand what's going on. Thank God I wasn't tested on this, otherwise you would have something like this. Over the course of the story, we watch the cast slowly develop the Soaring Club. It feels like a much slower slice of life, especially during the beginning portions. So much so, that I was surprised that this plot actually had conflict. These conflicts are rare, but they're grounded in reality. As soon as you get invested in watching the team build the glider, the story sucker punches you. What makes this even more compelling is that the conflict makes real sense and is logically sound for the event to happen. There's no outrageous conflict, no overly melodramatic drama or tragedy. Oh god, that would be terrible. Anyway, we want our cast to succeed and to be able to fly. It makes their struggle and victory much more authentic when they overcome it and reach their goal. I don't know how many times I've yelled at this man while reading this visual novel. In regards to the soundtrack, there's a lot of ambient electronica tracks that help provide a positive atmosphere that plays throughout the visual novel's slice of life moments. But the most notable tracks are the uplifting and motivational faster paced songs. These songs come into full force, helping elevate the scenes at the route's inspirational and wondrous moments, with grand band orchestrations. Some of my favorite songs involve the use of the snare drum, violins, and woodwinds. Speaking of inspiration, the route does play with your emotions. I'm a sucker for the trope of when the opening song starts playing in the anime episode, and here is no different. It's at this moment where their emotions are the most heightened, and the vocal track just absolutely nails it. For the visuals, it's no surprise that for a visual novel about flying in the sky, it would have vivid and colorful backgrounds. A lot of the outside backgrounds have a great sense of scale and depth, going as far as showing the sun setting or rising over the horizon. There are some absolutely fantastic pictures of the sky, showing off the many multicolored gradients and the depiction of the vast sky. The route progression I took was Kotori, Ageha, Asa, Yoru, and Amane. Amane's route is locked behind Kotori's route, and Yoru's route is locked behind Asa. Ideally, you should leave Amane's route for the very end, and I'll explain as we get to her part. Now let's begin with Kotori. Now Kotori's route is really good. You could make this visual novel only about her, and I would have been perfectly fine with that as the visual novel. Kotori is the very first heroine introduced in If My Heart Had Wings. We see a lonely Kotori in her wheelchair on the hill surrounded by windmills overlooking the view. Kotori sends out a paper airplane to which it reaches Aoi. Picking up the airplane, Aoi walks up to Kotori and asks her if she sent out the airplane, to which she responds with yes, as she cries with tears in her eyes. So based on this scene, you would interpret Kotori as a fragile and delicate girl. But she's anything but that. Throughout the beginning of the visual novel, she exudes a haughty, prideful attitude. She's antisocial, and she has an overly stubborn demeanor. Her attitude gave me quite the headache as we see Aoi try to interact with her and see her deliberately brush off his attempts. It got to the point where she was my most disliked character in the whole visual novel, which says a lot about her character transformation when I now say that she's my favorite character in the whole visual novel. A good portion of the common route is just trying to get Kotori to change her behavior, and the reason for her attitude is explained here, where her disabled status has a profound psychological effect on Kotori, as her condition leads her to think more apprehensively and causes her lack of self-confidence. Seeing her gradually change is very meaningful for Kotori, and this happens when the story is still in the common route, and we haven't even reached the halfway point yet. By halfway through the visual novel, the story goes through a small time skip, and it's at this point that Kotori becomes a lot more confident and passionate about the Soaring Club, and I was truly happy at her change. She's still prideful and childish as always, but she acts more friendly and positive towards herself and others, and after getting Underclassman, she acts like a proper leader. As we continue into Kotori's route, we learn more about her specific circumstances and her feelings about what flying means to her. The visual novel spends so much time focusing on the slice of life aspects that when the visual novel throws in a couple of problems, we, the reader, and the cast are completely blindsided by the sudden issue. It's emotionally frustrating because after seeing the cast work so hard to accomplish their goal, these problems could potentially ruin everything. The worst part of it all makes logical sense. Kotori's route sets up the elements perfectly to create a great domino effect for these unfortunate events. But it's because of these series of events that when the cast eventually overcomes these obstacles, the visual novel is at its highest point, ending on an emotionally charged, uplifting, and gratifying conclusion, accompanied by breathtaking visuals as the characters soar to accomplish their goals. And this is only one route. We still have more to go through. Ageha is Ao's happy-go-lucky, cheerful childhood friend, and is the most sociable and fun one of the group. There's a lot of playful, flirtatious banter between the two, as each other's closest childhood friends, and it keeps things entertaining through her route with her charisma.
Aoi, 悪いけど先に帰って。これから姉妹で熱く語り合うから。主に拳で。これも宿命。血を分けた姉といえども、戦いを避けられぬ悲しき定め。
Ageha's route goes into their relationship now that the two of them have been reunited, as lots of things has changed since they were small kids. The build up to the two's first H scene is very sensual and greatly captures their emotion. It shows the fulfillment of the two making love to each other as it describes their feelings that they've had for each other for a long time, combined with the awkwardness of banging your first girlfriend. After these first few scenes, the story continuously moves forward with an essence of frustration, as inner motivations and desires are still kept hidden. This remains till the very end until the big plot reveal happens and the story finally heads towards its celebratory conclusion. It's a very good childhood friend route that takes the main story's overall goal and smartly reframes it to fit the relationship between Ao and Ageha. According to all known laws of aviation, there is no way a lolly should be able to fly. Its arms are too small to get its small little lolly body off the ground. The lolly, of course, flies anyway, because the lolly doesn't care what humans think is impossible. Funny how this dumb meme can be used to describe Asa's route. Asa is one of the underclassmen we meet in the later portions of the visual novel as new members of the Soaring Club. She's a bit shy and reserved, but a kind character that brings a warm and comforting atmosphere to the group.
何ですかそのペットみたいな。
Her route goes into her background and her relationship with Yoru and prevents a really good self-reflection into her personality. Being the twin sister of Yoru and coming from a rich family, Asa appears quite ordinary, and it's this average, commonplace outlook of Asa that leads the route to focus on her inferiority complex. It's a topic that's grounded in reality and believable on a personal level that anyone can get behind and learn from. The conclusion is not as emotionally gripping as Kotori or Ageha's, but a cute and fitting ending for Asa's character. Asa and Yoru's stories are very intertwined together like the close sisters they are. Almost all of Yoru's personal conversations with Aoi are talking about Asa and how much Yoru loves her. So going on Yoru's route immediately after reading Asa's route was making me feel like a terrible person. Now Yoru's route is locked behind Asa, so you'll have to complete Asa's route before doing Yoru's. But honestly, if you wanted to choose Yoru over Asa after reading the beginning of Asa's route, you should feel bad. Yoru is the complete opposite of Asa, a serious, smart, and stoic individual, where her indifferent, cold personality ends up coming in conflict with others. But around her sister, she becomes more relaxed and reserved while still retaining her objective personality. Like I said before, a lot of the route involves the background surrounding the two of them, and we get to see Yoru's perspective on the whole ordeal. Compared to Asa's ordinary self, we get to see Yoru and her outlook of life as a logical genius. It's a unique point of view since throughout the visual novel, we follow each heroine and their pursuit of the fleeting dream of flying in the sky. However, Yoru doesn't believe in non-materialistic ideas like that, rejecting this venture that has no logical reason or objective goals. Her route capitalizes on this behavior and train of thought and has Yoru go through a great character transformation that confronts her conceited beliefs, telling her story as the most poetic route in the visual novel. Amane is both a complicated character, but she's also the most simple one. She's quite the airhead.
The inner machinations of my mind are an enigma.
Amane is a resident genius who influenced Aoi and the cast to join the Soaring Club. Her intelligence far surpasses the average person, and the cast has the utmost respect for her intellect and abilities. And yet, whenever it comes to the most mundane chores or common sense, they have absolutely no faith in her. The disconnect between this individual extremely capable of designing complex structures like windmills and gliders, and this overly ditzy behavior, ignorant for basic needs like eating and sleeping, makes for some extremely funny moments, especially when it comes to romance later on, which makes me absolutely love her. Amane's route is locked behind Kotori's route, and ideally I would recommend reading Amane's route last. Her route fills in and reveals the last major plot elements that reside throughout the whole visual novel, as well as providing closure to the last remaining characters related to her. The visual novel gives subtle hints at her story in the common route, making her past mysterious and leaving further details to be disclosed in her story. The route goes into Amane's prior experiences in the Soaring Club and talks about her motivation for joining the club in the first place. The foundation is very similar to Yoru's route, as her status as the genius student everyone has expectations of, but the story is told slightly different. For example, if Yoru would refuse to do something, she would call it pointless and meaningless. But if it was Amane, Amane wouldn't care any other way, looking at it with an indifferent and lifeless attitude. Amane's motivation becomes challenged throughout the plot as elements from her past has a lasting effect on her present self and the cast, told in the heaviest route in all of the visual novel. Despite the heavy atmosphere and content, emotionally similar to Kotori's route, Amane's route ends on a joyous and delightful conclusion that fully closes out the whole visual novel. If My Heart Had Wings is a slow starter, but once it starts ramping up speed, it really takes off, becoming an inspirational visual novel. Each heroine has their own personal feelings regarding what soaring in the sky means to them and lets those emotions fly free. And watching them come together to accomplish their goals, even through adversity, is admirable, moving, and meaningful. If My Heart Had Wings is a strong recommendation, and an even higher recommendation given the $15 price tag. It's definitely worth picking up this encouraging and uplifting visual novel and watching these youths spread their wings in this vast, colorful sky. Subscribe if you liked the video and want to see more. Check back every week for new content. Check out some of my other anime visual novel reviews on my channel playlist. Links are in the description down below.